Hey guys! Today I'm going to show you a time lapse of this watercolour painting that I did. This isn't a step-by-step tutorial, but I will try and break down some of the process that was involved. So first I painted the entire background with a light wash of yellow ochre, and I made sure to keep a space where the sun is shining through. I then used the same yellow ochre colour to build up the distant tree line. Then I started to apply a more bluish green colour to build up the main tree line. I'm really just mapping in the biggest shapes with that greenish blue colour. Then using that yellow ochre colour I began to build up the most distant trees. These trees are covered by the fog, so they are very faint, so I made sure to keep my paint very watery here. Once I was happy with this, I began to refine the shape of that distant tree line. I then started to apply a much darker green layer to really refine the distant tree line. Once I applied this, I went back over the edges with a damp brush just to soften the edges a bit. I then painted over with a wash of ultramarine blue, just to really refine that these distant trees are going to be more of a bluish green. I then filled in the entire front section with a more yellowish green. Once that was done, I began refining each individual tree shape, and I made sure to vary the size and colour of each tree. I still kept in mind that I wanted the trees closest to the viewers to be that more yellowish green colour. And as I began refining the more distant trees, I was adding more blue to my green. Once I had the basic tree shapes down, I began going back over everything just to refine it more. Mostly I was focusing on adding more shadows at this point. When adding shadows, I was careful not to cover the entire shape, so I leave some spaces for the highlights to be showing through as well. Just for a more dramatic effect, I made sure that the trees towards the edges of the canvas were a bit darker. This just creates a more of a vignette effect. At this point I decided that those distant trees, I made them a bit too dark, so I tried to lift up some of the paint again just to lighten them a bit. Now I took an even darker colour and tried to refine some of the tree trunk and branch shapes. I also made sure that the trees closest to us have the highest level of detail, while the trees further away tend to have less detail. This helps create the illusion of distance. Finally, I mixed in some white gouache with my green paint, just to add some final highlights to some of the trees. And after some finishing touches here and there, the painting was complete.